following presentation is intended for users of tools which emit vibration and which can potentially cause harm to individuals. So users of those tools, this is a presentation to explain how Reactec's HAVWEAR, which has been invested in by your employer, can help protect you when using such tools. Hand-arm vibration syndrome is the name given to all of the potential medical injuries that can result from the use of vibratory tools. They are, in medical terms, termed neurological injuries, which means to the nerve endings, vascular injuries, which means to your blood vessels, and musculoskeletal injuries, which means to the connection between the muscles and tissue. Putting aside these medical terms, what's important to understand is the risk of using tools that emit vibration into the hands. Using such tools for prolonged times can result in impacts such as you not being able to hold things consistently, such as a mobile phone or even a pint. You will be unable to do intricate work such as tying shoelaces or perhaps undoing small buttons, perhaps on a child's clothing, and also sleepless nights from the pins and needles and tingling that can result in your fingers. So to give you some appreciation of how likely you may be to experience such injuries, there is a relationship between the human response to vibration and the level of vibration that you are exposed to. If you're exposed to what is termed the action value from the HSE, and I'll explain that term in the next slide, and you're exposed at that level regularly over a period of about 12 years, then you have a 10% probability of developing the vascular damage, the vibration white finger, which results in you not being able to feel things at the end of your fingers. In order to be able to quantify the level of the risk that you face while using tools, the HSE have come up with quite a simple point system. And this point system combines the two factors which come into play in terms of essentially defining or determining the level of risk that you're undertaking. And those two factors are, first of all, the amount of time that you're exposed to that vibration. And the second factor is how strong that vibration is. That is, what is the vibration magnitude of that vibration? And any combination of time and any combination of vibration strength can be combined in a manner to give you points. And if you're exposed to what is considered an exposure action value of 100 points, then it is necessary to take action to reduce that exposure level. And if you're exposed as high as 400 points, then that's considered a legal limit above which people should not work. Just to put a little bit more emphasis on this, and this is guidance from the HSE, which really pertains or applies to people who are in a healthy condition and who are not already showing any symptoms of hand-arm vibration syndrome. So below the action value of 100 points, no action is necessary. If you're exposed between 100 and 400 points, then it is necessary to take action to reduce that risk as low as reasonably practical. It also means that you should be given access to regular occupational health screening. So this would be that's your exposure level in an ongoing manner. An exposure value of 400 points, if you exceed 400 points, then the guidance from the HSE is that you should stop working. Now, as I say, these are points values which are relevant to healthy workers. So given that these are the risks that are, or these are the thresholds unto which your exposure should be controlled below, It's important for you also to appreciate that you are very much able to influence the level of exposure that you are exposed to when you're using tools. And this graphic here shows you some of the factors which can come into play and will impact the level of risk that you receive when you are using tools. So the first one about tool selection is about making sure you use the right job for the tool. As an example of that, if a hedge trimmer was to be used to cut a thick branch, which really needed some sort of chainsaw type tool, then you could expose yourself very readily well above the exposure limit value. Applying excessive force to a tool and sort of basically pushing down on the tool rather than letting the tool do its work, again, can significantly affect the amount of risk that's coming back into your body through your hands. In a similar vein, how tightly you grip the tool's handles. In the same approach, it should be about letting the tool do the work as opposed to forcing the tool to do the work. And then finally, the condition of the tool itself and also the accessory used with that tool are very important factors in determining how much vibration magnitude is given off by that tool. And you should always highlight to your supervisors any situations where you think a tool is not performing properly, as you will probably be able to determine that from the amount of vibration that you can feel coming into your hands. So in this next slide, what we're trying to do is to bring to life a real life example of just how much variability is possible when individuals set about doing the same task. It's a work study of a group of employees excavating a hole in the ground where all of the employees were using the same tool, and they were asked to share the work in essentially 2- and 3-man teams, and this exercise was repeated several times over. By repeating the exercise several times over, it was possible to establish that in digging any one hole rather, the maximum exposure from that exercise as a whole was about 280 points. Therefore, if the work was shared between 2-man teams, then the maximum exposure should be 140 points, and that's the black line in this graph. And for the entire exercise, the holes were dug by groups of either 2, 3, or even 4 men. It was never the case that any one individual excavated a hole on their own. So having done this work and then looked at the readings from all of the individuals, so all of the individuals involved, what was their maximum exposure that they themselves received, you can see from the graph there's a huge variability. So the employer thinks that everybody should be below the black line. In reality, there are 5 people above the black line, and the operator, Pete, far exceeded what the task should have resulted in terms of exposure risk, and almost is at a level of the exposure limit value, which, as we say, is not illegal, is not appropriate to be working at that level of risk. And the reason why he was exposed to such high levels is because he didn't share the work evenly with his colleague. And basically, when he used the tool, he wasn't using the tool well. He was using it such that more energy was coming into his body than was actually going into the road surface, which then also caused the time of the excavation to be longer. All in all, resulting in he had a significant exposure beyond what his employer thought was actually possible. So what we're about to talk about now is how the technology that your company has invested in from Reactec can help ensure that you're not put in the same position as Pete. So first of all, there is a wrist-worn device, and on that wrist-worn device essentially gathers all of that information on use of tools in terms of how much time on the tool and the vibration magnitude of the tool, and it gives that information on its screen. We then have a means of getting the data from that device and transmitting it to what's called a hosted reporting system. And in so doing, that gets all of the information that's gathered by that device back to your employer so that they can ensure that they're keeping you working in safe conditions. In terms of how the system works, now there will be posters beside the equipment to remind you of these steps, and there's also a video to show you in action people taking you through these steps. But in summary, you sign out a device at the start of each working day, and you will be given an ID card which identifies you to the system to allow you to do that. You collect the unit from what's called a docking station or a charging unit, and there's a wrist strap and holder into which you insert the device in order to attach it snugly to your wrist. When you then go to use tools, if your employer has fitted these with tool tags, you press a button on the side of the unit once, and then you present the face of the device, the HAVWEAR, up to that RFID tag on the tool. You'll hear a beep to confirm that you have actually connected to that tool. The RASOR device that was mentioned in the previous slide is assigned in a similar way, and you may be given one of these devices either so that your employer is getting data collected from your HAVWEAR device and other devices during the working day, but also potentially to help you with lone worker protection, as it has lone worker features. If your employer is wanting you to use it for that purpose, there's additional training information that will be supplied on that. At the end of your working day, you return your device back to the docking station. You don't need to return it to the same docking station you removed it from, and you don't need to return it to the same bay within the docking station. You simply return it. It is important through the course of the working day that you do wear your HAVWEAR on your wrist at all times. And I'll come back to that point in a later slide. And once your device is docked back in the docking station, the data is automatically transmitted so that the information is available to be reviewed and assessed. So now we'll go into a little detail on the sort of information that's available from your HAVWEAR device and the alerts and notifications that your device will give you. So in the center of the device, it shows you the exposure point level that you've accumulated through the course of the working day. As an alternative, and it's something that your manager will have decided is the most useful way for you to see the information. Alternatively, the display will show you the time remaining for you to reach a certain exposure threshold. So the time remaining is based on the points that you've already accumulated in terms of exposure to vibration, and then how long it will take for you then to reach the next threshold based on the tool that you're most recently been using. And what we mean by thresholds are the exposure action value and the exposure limit value. So when your exposure is less than the exposure action value, a little black dot will appear in the green screen of the device. As your exposure then increases, then the black dot will increasingly move through the yellow area of the traffic light screen. So first one black dot, then a second, and then a third black dot in the amber area. If you were to reach your exposure limit value, the black dot would appear in the red portion of the screen. Now, while your exposure is increasing, should you exceed the action value, then you will receive an alert from your HAVWEAR device. So it will both buzz and vibrate to alert you to the fact that your exposure level is at a dangerous level. And that the length of that alerting will increase with your exposure level. So as the black dot moves, then you receive a longer alert until you ultimately reach the exposure limit value, which is the strongest
buzzing and vibration that you'll receive at that time. Now, if your supervisor has a RASOR device, one of the other really useful features with that device is that he can use it to give you immediate feedback on how well a tool is being used. So when a tool is being used most effectively, and when a tool is in very good condition, it will give its lowest vibration levels. So with the RASOR device, a supervisor can stand close to a HAVWEAR user and give them feedback on how well the tool is performing while it's being used. So if the tool is being used most effectively, the vibration will be at its lowest. So for instance, if you were to overgrip the tool or to push the tool too hard, then it would cause the vibration to increase. And there's a little indicator on the RASOR screen will show that vibration level is increasing relative to the expected vibration of the tool. And also it will give a reading of in points per hour. So obviously the higher the points per hour, the higher the vibration level. And for your awareness, the HAVWEAR device is always measuring vibration. Now, should you forget to tag onto a tool, or should the tool not be available with a tag value, it will still be able to determine the HAV exposure level that you're being exposed to. And it does this in a way because it has an ability to measure the vibration level directly on the device, and we call this sensed vibration. So when we are picking up vibration without information from a tool tag, then we call it sensed exposure points, or SEP. If a tool tag has been used, then the vibration level that's programmed into the tag, we use that vibration level to calculate what we describe as TEP points, or tool exposure points.
So finally, just some key points to remember in terms of how the HAVWEAR is working. So the HAVWEAR is also always sensing vibration, and whenever it picks up vibration, that's when it starts counting the time of a tool being used. If you tag onto a tool, the letter T will appear, tag onto a tool tag, the letter T will appear, and you will see your points in the center of the screen. It's important when you move between tools that you tag to each tool that you use. So when you move from a second tool, from a first tool, you don't have to tag off the first tool, but you do have to tag on to the second tool. If you forget to tag onto your second tool, you will be collecting points at the rate that was applicable to the first tool. If you've stopped using vibratory tools, and the last tool that you were tagged onto was quite a powerful tool, then there is an ability to switch your device off, and that's by simply pressing the button and holding it until it beeps and the word off appears in the screen. Then you let go and confirm again with another press that you do indeed want to switch the device off. And again, these details are shown in your posters to remind you of how that happens. So just to summarise all of the material from this presentation, it is important for you to tag on to each tool when your employer has provided you with tools that have tool tags on them. If you're moving off a high vibrating tool or a powerful tool, you can switch the device off. When you want to switch it back on, it's simply tag back on to the tool that you intend to use. It's important that you return the unit at the end of every day to allow it to be charged and for the data that is collected to be transmitted onwards to the reporting system. Do not remove your HAVWEAR from your wrist unless it is switched off or returning it back to the docking station. If in doubt, there is no reason to take the HAVWEAR off your wrist. And finally, a HAVWEAR which has been enabled with safe distance will alert you if you come too near a colleague. Your responsibility is to check your surroundings and move away from anyone that you are not socially distanced from. So this concludes the presentation. A little graphic here to perhaps encourage you that vibration, white finger or hand-arm vibration syndrome is a serious debilitating disease that will impact your quality of life. Your employer has invested in HAVWEAR's technology. Use it as it will help keep you safe.